Chevron 1, encoded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed your hunt. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer, and let's set the dogs of war.
Chevron 2, encoded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
I'll also say that you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3, encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4, encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5, encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6, encoded.
That's why you can't, little boy.
Great Scott.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass! I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an ally.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
We are back. Saturday Night Drive-In returns after its extended hiatus for a lot of reasons, including that I was on my deathbed. But it's okay. I'm alive. We're here. We're ready to have some fun. Jed, how you doing today, my friend?
I am doing great. I just finished rewatching a phenomenal movie, and I am excited to talk about it, excited to be back here because this is one of the few glimpses of positivity that I get in my week with how bad the entertainment industry is. So I always look forward to these. So
yes,
it is great to be back.
It is great to do this because, yes, we do this show. Part of the reasons we do Saturday Night Drive-In is to just have a moment of positivity in all the hurricane of crap that we have to suffer through, even though, let's be honest, we do enjoy just a little bit. We enjoy wading through the crap because it's fun being right. It's fun being right. Everything's wrong. But we also, as we said, we like to just sit back and watch good things, whether it's a series or a movie or whatever. We want to enjoy stuff. We want to celebrate it and remind you that the good was out there. And that something I'm saying a lot lately, remember, they can't take away what was good before. They're going to try and make you forget it. They're going to try and alter it. They're going to try and retcon it in the bad way, but they are going to lose because they cannot take away what we fell in love with and what we hold close to our hearts, especially if we have the physical media or digital copies that have been unaltered and are nice and safe and tucked away on hard drives. But that is why Saturday Night Drive-In exists, because we celebrate what is awesome. And as Jed said, we are celebrating the first tonight of the only 3 Indiana Jones movies that exist, because there's only 3.
Yeah, I've never heard of them making any others.
Yeah. After 89, Last Crusade, that's it. It's over. Nothing else. It's done.
I mean, it's literally called The Last Crusade. It kind of implies it's the last one.
They are still riding off into the sunset this very day. That's why when we talk about Last Crusade, we'll talk about that credit. I love the credits. But we are here, of course, as I said, to talk about the first of the Indiana Jones trilogy, because there are only 3. Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I apologize that this says Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I can't control the cover art of the Blu-rays when I buy them. It's what arrives. I apologize, because it is just Raiders of the Lost Ark, because that's what it was released as back in the day. What year was it? 84? 85?
Was it that late?
81. Wow, no, 81.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Sorry. I got Swiss cheese brain right now. We have to. We
You have a
cut this
good
short.
excuse. You have a good
I
excuse.
have Swiss cheese
Being
brain.
sick and then whooping Dermy's ass. That's more than enough. Excuse.
Yeah, we won't bring that into this show. That's tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Well, I just will say, Dre was in the audience last night in Ballbusters, so we will have a direct viewer's interpretation of the weed fight that went down on Ballbusters. But we won't talk about that. You can't forgive me, Legatus. It's not my fault. That's how they shipped it. They slapped it on there. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Not my fault. Anyway, hail to the chat. How you guys doing? Hail Legatus Legionist, one of my mods, one of my regulars. Hail Al Gurmless Strong, good sir. Hail Jaden Hamilton, young man. How you doing? Good evening, Kale. And anybody else just chilling out and watching, we hope you enjoy the rest of the show. If you do enjoy it as we go forward, remember to hit that like button. And while it's on the live one, this will be reposted later, as I want to do. So let's get going. So 1981, hot off the heels of Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas created Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he brought in his crew. He brought back one John Williams to do the score. He tapped a young and up-and-comer called Steven Spielberg to direct it. And he went to what everybody at that point understood was going to be one of the future leading men megastars for the next 30 years, Harrison Ford, to be Indiana Jones. Jed, when did you first encounter this movie?
I can't say for certain. I was young. I was probably 8 or 9 and watched it at my grandparents' house. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's as long as I can remember, really, I've been loving Indiana Jones. So it's no escaping it. Even at my young age, it's a part of my my childhood. It's part of culture.
Yes. I've got a great story when we get to the soundtrack discussion at the end, the score discussion. I got a great little story for that one.
Since you just mentioned, everyone behind it, there's one thing that I despise about this movie because it gives me thematic blue balls or something like that, behind the scenes meta blue balls. Because this movie nearly gave us a Star Wars movie directed by Steven Spielberg because they got together. They were a team. They were a duo finally after Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they were thinking about doing it. But then the whole union shit with George Lucas stole it from us. Spielberg, just do a non-union production, and we could have gotten something truly unique.
He might have done Jedi, huh?
Mm-hmm. He was going to if it hadn't been for George Lucas's union.
I didn't
stuff.
know that. I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yep, no, that was the original plan, but George Lucas refused to make it a union's.
So they
production.
did Temple of Doom instead.
So they did Temple of Doom instead. They make a great duo. They make a phenomenal duo.
Well,
so, I love Return of the Jedi. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, but I still would have loved to see Spielberg's interpretation of it.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm not the biggest Spielberg fan in the world. In fact, I'm very critical of him on, I would say, 70% of his stuff, just because.
Well, after 2000, 2003, he's been garbage.
Yeah, but even in this, there's something that in my family when I was growing up, we called the Spielberg fatal flaw. There's one thing, and it's at the end, which takes points off for me overall. Because we'll talk about it when we discuss it, because we will discuss the final scenes. There's one thing in that to me that he does repeatedly in all movies, and I'll get to when I get to it. But I do give him respect that 95% of this movie is perfect in terms of structure, editing. It all comes together. It flows nicely, and at certain points, and that's kind of one of the weird things about this movie. How quickly it moves from stage to stage in terms of its where it takes place across the world, and before you know it, you're halfway through the movie, and they've gone to all these places. All these things happened, and again, this is the beauty of the story that George Lucas wrote, but also the direction of Steven Spielberg in this movie, where you are drawn in, and by the time the Marion's fake death happens during the chase scene. Throughout the market, when that happens, about half of the movie, you're completely drawn in. You've only known these characters for an hour, and you are completely committed to what and into what they're doing. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. The pace is one of the impressive things about this that I think a lot of modern films can take note from, because even with good movies these days, the pacing is all over the place. And it takes you so long to get invested in a film these days. When they nearly get you, you're pulled out by getting slow at a wrong point. And it's just
or bad comedy now. Now the thing is bad comedy destroys.
Bad comedy. Indiana Jones has a lot of good comedy and a lot of subtle things.
It's like straight man comedy. It's not
it's perfect.
I mean, one of my favorite moments is when they go to visit the old man who's translating the medallion of Ra, and when they figure it out, when Sala and Indy go, they're digging in the wrong place, and then Indy throws up the date that has been poisoned, but then Sala's hand just grabs it, and it just goes, look into the dead monkey, bad dates. I love that line. I love that line because it's just subtle humor delivered by the indomitable John Rhys Davies. It's just
he's so underrated these days. I've seen him in a lot of stuff.
I know. I mean, he gave an interview a few years ago where he expressed how people seem to and how he's loved his career, and he said, but I've never really done anything great. And people are going, what are you talking about? You're in everything. We love you. You're John Rhys Davies. He's great. John Rhys Davies is iconic in everything, and that's one of the reasons I love both Raiders and Last Crusade. Sala is such a great character, a great supporting character. Yes, in Crusade, they add a little more comic relief to him with his behavior in Last Crusade, which we'll talk about one day. But in this one, it's just they took it seriously, a little more seriously in this one, and he just delivers. He's one of those great supporting actors that can deliver both an anchor and a little bit of gravitas, but he doesn't. But he's not the star. But he just adds to it and adds a level of calm professionalism to the scene and the performance, and that's why one of the reasons I love John Rhys Davies. But the bad date, that's subtle humor, and it works. And like you said, the pacing goes. I mean, you realize after the initial tomb raid at in the opening gambit, there's a lull of action for like 20 minutes.
It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel, because it's exposition, but exposition with purpose and education as you learn about the Ark, as you learn about what the Nazi are doing. Again, this is a lost art in movie making now, both in writing and directing.
Well, there's a simple rule with exposition is never say something that the character should already know. It's a simple one that even first-time writers just kind of inherently know, but modern writers can't seem to grasp it. So in this movie, when Indy's giving all the exposition about the Ark, he's doing it to people who know nothing. It's a simple thing that we should not give any points to because of how basic it is. But these days, they're always saying stuff that they already know to each other. The characters are like, as you know, this castle's built like this, and so we can't do this. It's like, as you know, and it's just jarring. So seeing it done back how it was with talented writers is surprising, because I'm just so used to exposition being shit.
And also with the scene, one of the great moments of that scene where he's Professor Jones teaching these guys from the government about the Ark of the Covenant. I love it when he pulls out the giant ass thick book and he just opens it and starts leaving. Go, oh, here it is right here. And there's a depiction of the Ark laying waste to an army. And it's the additional layers to a scene beyond just the acting, beyond just the track. Because that's the moment where you first hear the track that is associated with the Ark. And again, we'll talk about John Williams at the end, like we like to do. We like to talk about music at the end of the show. But it's all woven together: the layers, the performance, the scenery, the props, the acting. I already said the acting performance, and then the music, and it all pulls it together. And it's just so good. And this movie is. And like Kale says in the chat right there, it pulls you in from the first one, because when I saw this, I was 5 years old. I think I was 5 years old. It's on VHS, and it's shown to me for the first time in our home because, I'm a kid. I couldn't go to the movies when it first came out. But it's shown to me, and you watch this. Even at that age, if nobody tells you what this is, and that was what I hear the stories about when it first came out, nobody knew what was happening when you went into this movie. you didn't know what was gonna what adventure you're about to walk into, and it's glorious because you start off with a tomb raid that you don't expect, going through a jungle, and you got this guy who's got a whip. Who's got a whip? It's a whip.
I don't like the whip reveal. It's more of a me problem than anything else, but if you've got a gun to your back, it takes a lot less time to pull the trigger than it does to grab a whip, turn around, and fling the whip. Like, it's always bothered me a little bit. It is a common trope. It is a common thing in movies where people, don't shoot. And, like, there is sort of a justification for it, but it's always bothered me at the back of my head. So I've never liked the first 30 seconds of the movie, but as soon as we get the face reveal from that point on, I love the intro.
Well, you think about how iconic that intro is, the opening gambit. There are several moments of that have taken over pop culture history when it comes to entertainment. I mean, it starts with the after when he gets to the idol, the whole looking at it, dealing with the sandbag, trying to guess the weight. That moment is iconic and has been reused over and over again, usually in either parody or respectful representation. But that right there, that moment, boom, it's cemented. And then, of course, giant rolling ball.
That's a classic.
But you realize in the opening 20 minutes of this movie, 2 or 3 moments became modern cinema history that are used over and over again in kind of combination shows. I mean, you watch best of moments of stuff like that. Indy running from the boulder is always there in compilation videos. It's there because it's just who would think that would be something that would be locked onto, but it is, and it's incredible, and it's fascinating, and that just again, like you were saying, they knew how to do it once upon a time. They knew how to deliver imagery, impact, pacing, acting, performance, choreography. They knew how to deliver it and have a lasting impact. I mean, that's all practical effects. There's no such thing as CGI in 1981. People say, oh, what about Star Wars? Models.
Yep. No, CGI computer generated is not a thing yet. Computers couldn't do that yet. And that's something that was brought up during a discussion with Mission Impossible recently, specifically with this film, is how much more engaging practical effects are for the average moviegoer. Just knowing that it's real goes a long way for immersion. Even the big budget movies these days, even back a few years ago when, they were still good, there was always a issue at the back of your mind. There was always a uncanny valley when it came to these big over-the-top action set pieces, because of course we know they're not real and your brain can't separate those. But back in the 80s, there was no other alternative but for things to be real. That's why I think 80s action movies and 90s are some of the best ever made. They're peak because they're real. They can't, question human endurance. You can't question their durability. It's just, it is what it is. And they operate very well within the confines of reality, whereas modern movies have a very tenuous relationship with reality
in a lot of ways. A lot of ways.
Beyond
just the visuals, the themes. And that's one of the reasons we've established in this now essentially how this is a movie that is a perfect example of a bygone era that is I hate to say probably never coming back again. At least not in a wide, massive legacy entertainment aspect. Independent may reach that level again because of the tools at our disposal these days that we didn't have that 30 years ago where it was impossible to get. But this movie encapsulates what entertainment was 40 years ago. A dashing leading man, handsome, good hero, but a little bit of a roguish nature to him. Marion, a strong, very defiant female protagonist who
love Marion. She's probably my favorite character in the movie. I mean, they introduce her getting drunk. She seems like a fun woman to hang out with, and I've just always liked her a little. Yeah, she just seemed a lot more laid back, a lot more gruff and down to earth. And so I really appreciate it, especially back in the 80s, at least from what I've seen of 80s cinema, she was a very unique female protagonist. And I really liked how they portrayed her. And she had a really good sense of humor as well. We mentioned that with Indian Salik or whatever, but she makes a lot of snide jokes that I always find myself laughing at because she's just a fun person to be around. And I can see why Indy is so attracted to her. Like, I never understood the romance in Temple of Doom. I know
That
why it
was
didn't work
lust. No,
out. That was lust.
That was lust. That was pure
that was
lust.
just pure, absolutely.
Pure
but in
lust.
this one, there was chemistry. There was a
well, there's history. There's history.
history.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because we're as we get into the characters there.
But
we'll talk about
their lifestyles, their personalities played off each other very well because he likes to be out in the dirt. He likes to be out in the grime, in the thick of it, and so does she. And that's an important thing for relatability in a relationship. So I just love these two together.
All right, let's walk through the door then, and let's start them with characters. We've established what this movie exists as an art form. But now let's talk about the movie. We start on, it's called Raiders of the Lost Ark because they are seeking the Ark of the Covenant, the vessel in which the remains of the 10 Commandments that Moses came down with and shattered at the feet of those worshiping the golden calf. It was collected and it became a weapon of the Hebrews against those who were stopping them from trying to return and maintain their holy land, this and that. And as Belloc calls it, a telephone to God. It is a receiver to God. And those who are unworthy will be smite or smote. Sorry, we smoted. Smite, smoted, whatever. I can't speak to it. But that's the core of it. The hunt, it's the hunt for the Ark. But we don't get into that until the first 15 minutes. But then there's Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford. The second character within a 6-year period that just catapulted him to the megastar level he's at. Even though he's angry old, I don't give an F man right now, which we all laugh at when he does it because we accept it because we understand he doesn't give a shit, and that's why we kind of just laugh and don't care. At least I don't care afterwards because he doesn't care about anything. He just wants his paycheck. Doesn't care about anything.
Respectable.
Yeah, so I can respect that. And even when he does that whole thing where he did the Twitter video from a week ago, we know that, again, he's just doing it for money. It's not because he cares. And I respect that. And even though it's cringe and horrible and stupid that, but either way, back then though, to be Han Solo in Indiana Jones was something that to have two iconic characters under one dude's resume was mind-blowing. And to play Indiana Jones, who is honestly completely different from Han Solo, both rogues in a way, but completely different in terms of an academic who is really smart, but as you said, gets into the dirt, goes to the places that people dare not, and seeks out the mythologies that people have woven around artifacts and this and that. And that's and to watch him go through this movie. And we've talked about this in Pride before, so I'm going to say this now. And you can probably back me up on this because we had this conversation. Indiana Jones is a flawed character.
No question.
He's a very flawed character because again, you have to go to Temple of Doom as the prequel before getting to our Raiders, but he wasn't always in it for it belongs in a museum. To dip into Temple of Doom for a second, fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory. It's when you get to Raiders that he's at that point in his life and his journey where it's, I'm doing this to find the answers, not fortune and glory anymore. And that's, again, you have to look at the whole character arc through all three movies to get to that. But, and again, we struggle when we have a trilogy to stay within the one movie. It's hard.
It happens.
But when we say he's a flawed character throughout this movie, it's a totally fair assessment because he F's up all the time. He makes bad decisions. And
But they're human decisions, and we don't
Yes.
blame him for them. With notable exception of all of the movie that shall not be named, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's mistakes throughout the movie, they're not human mistakes. They're insane mistakes that she's not questioned for. Indiana Jones recognizes that he's made mistakes in Raiders and works very, very hard to correct them when he does. She's just perfect at everything. That's why you need flawed characters. Flawed is important. Mary Sue's out there. Flaws are essential at relatability.
I mean, one of his early great flaws is that he doesn't think ahead. As proof in the opening gambit, he didn't realize that Belloc was still on his trail, and Belloc is not a better archaeologist, but he's a better scumbag at stealing. And Indy doesn't take the extra steps to make sure that, first of all, his associates that he's brought with him on the expedition are not basically killers that will kill him and take it, or that they've betrayed him to Belloc. So you get his complete failure, and he fails. His opening gambit is a complete and total failure.
He doesn't end up with the idol.
No, he loses that. But what happens when we get back to when we get back to America? He goes to Marcus and says, "Listen, here are some pieces. I got the good pieces. I can see. We can see. You can buy this from me. It's enough money. I know where Belloc's going to sell the idol. I can go get it. If you see, he knows he effed up, but he's going to try and fix it.
Yep,
and that's cool. But then the real story takes over, and of course, he gets drawn into Belloc's orbit again. But that's why. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to change the topic.
So all right, but that's why I think in that first 20, 30 minutes, we instantly relate to Indy because he's flawed, he's screwed up, but we feel for him because he got screwed over by Belloc. And it's like, God damn, he got screwed over. I want to see him right that wrong. Oh, no, sorry, you got to go get the Ark. You got to go get the Ark. All right, go ahead. Swap it out.
Well, since we're talking about characters, I want to talk about Belloc. I love Belloc's character. As a kid, I didn't care. None of the villains in Indiana Jones ever stood out to me as kids. But as an adult, being able to recognize the writing behind these characters, Belloc is fascinating because he's a lot like Indiana Jones. He's got a lot of similar traits, a lot of similar motivations. The idea of discovery fuels him in a very similar way it does to Indy. Just that last interaction in the movie that the two of them had before opening the Ark when he's got the missile launcher.
His speeches.
His speeches. It's just like, you want this open as much as I do. You need to know. I need to know. And Belloc does take it too far because he throws caution to the wind. He doesn't care who he works for. He just needs to discover. I know. India at least has some restraint. He loves to find out all these things, but he does have a limit. Keeping
the moral
Marion
code.
alive. Yeah, the moral code tempers his curiosity, and Belloc is who Indy will become if he doesn't have the moral code temper his curiosity.
Indy believes in respecting what he finds. Just as we always say, respect the source material. Indy wants to respect the source material of these artifacts, where they came from, and put them someplace where they can be protected, collected, and preserved. And that's his moral code by the time we get to that. Because, again, Temple of Doom shows us what he is before Raiders, where he cared more about fortune and glory. And then that story changes him with returning the Shankara stones to the village. But now we get to Raiders, and it's about collecting, protecting, and finding the truth. And like you said, Indy wants that truth, wants that discovery, wants to know as much as Belloc does. But because Indy doesn't do it for the fortune and glory anymore, Belloc does it for his greed. It's a combination greed for his own desires. And then also, I mean, in terms of the idol that he stole from Indy, he just sold that on the black market for money. He doesn't care where it goes. It's money, which will then fund his further explorations.
He needs to know, but he doesn't care about sharing his knowledge. So as soon as he knows, it's worthless to him. And so that's at least what I believe why he sells it. As soon as he finds it out, his curiosity is sated, and then it's a worthless piece of history to him. Yeah. And so he has no qualms about selling it.
That's why you said that. That's why I said his speeches are two of the best monologues in the movie. The bar speech about burying the watch, it's worthless now, but dig it up later, it's priceless. And then, like you said, the canyon speech, where it's like, blow it up, but then you'll never know.
Well,
Jones.
and that first speech does set up one of my favorite jokes in the movie. It's like, buried in the sand 10,000 years later, it'll be worth something. Oh, in 10,000 years, Jones, you might be worth something if they dig you up here. I love that joke.
Yeah, again, subtle humor.
Very subtle humor.
That doesn't break the flow and the pace of the scene.
And doesn't counteract the characters. Every joke makes sense within the characterization shown. I know, it's weird. Good writing happened.
I know.
It's hard to believe that these days, that writing could be good.
George Lucas is a good writer. Yes, he's a better writer when there are those around to temper him from going too far. But George Lucas is, without a doubt, one of the most creative minds in fantasy and science fiction in the past 40 years. And that's where you get this from. This is George Lucas telling us a fantastical story based around, in this sense, as opposed to Star Wars, on the ground, down-to-earth, normal people. Because as great as Indy is as a hero, god damn does he get beat up a lot. Especially Raiders, he really gets battle damage in Raiders. Not so much in Temple of Doom or Crusade, but in Raiders, he gets battle damage. The fight scene, first of all, the escape from the dig site, when they escape from the tomb and are then he has to stop the Ark from leaving.
Yeah.
First, there's the plane fight, which is just glorious. Now, fun story. When I was young and they had the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular when that first started, and I went to see it, that was what they did on that one. I don't know if it changed later on, but it was really cool to watch it. I mean, again, the idea of the practical effects, you're sitting there in a half stadium seating around this giant setup that looks exactly like the airplane scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you're watching these stunt people reenact the entire thing, and the explosions are right there in your face. It was cool. It's like you're watching the movie. To your point, the movie drew you in with the practical effects, but because it was practical effects, because it was done with real physical props, they could recreate it for an amusement theme park event, and it was bad ass. Because you feel like you're watching the movie live. It doesn't matter in that moment that it's not Harrison Ford or Karen Allen or the other people involved in that scene. But when you're sitting there, because you're far enough away, it's that illusion that they're in their costumes, so it doesn't matter that it's other people. But the choreography is the same. The explosions are the same. The plane is the same. Everything that happens is the same, and it's awesome. And that's why practical effects are what really, like you said, it makes you feel like the movie is something you can attach to. The uncanny valley is this when it's practical effects.
Oh, absolutely. And since we're talking about the choreography briefly, I just love how this movie crafts people's fight styles to their characters. That's something that I have a big problem with in modern movies, is everything's just homogenous. Like in the Marvel movie, everyone fights exactly the same way. Black Widow, John Wick, everybody has the same fight style. And it's always bothered me. But in this one, Indy's a brawler, so he's not a ninja. He's not a martial artist. And you can see that in the way that he fights everybody.
The bar fight. Right away, he's getting beat up. And one of my favorite scenes is when he's got his face pressed down on the bar and he's in trouble. He sees Marion Hyde, goes, whiskey. And she hands him the bottle and then lights, and everything gets lit on fire. It's great choreography. And there are stakes. Because again, Indy gets hurt. Going back to after the plane fight scene, then the car chase scene,
which is my favorite part of the movie.
They work a car chase scene into this movie, and it's not just a car chase scene. It's got all the classic moments that you expect from a great choreographed car chase, and not just car chase. He's hanging on for his life off the truck. He's getting.
I don't know how you do that practically. It's insane.
You do it, but
which builds tension. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's a cool thing about practical stunts is it is real, and so there's an aspect of yes, I know obviously Indiana Jones isn't going to die, but he could in filming the movie, and that is inherited tension
Yeah.
from
And
filming.
and it's just also great moments. Like even the lowliest Nazi scrub, he has to fight hard against him because
Mhm.
they're just regular. He's just a regular dude. He has no superpowers. He has no
No.
abilities. He has a brain. That's what he has. He can think and he can come up with solutions because he uses his knowledge of a tomb. Like his knowledge of how a tomb is built is how they escape from the Ark's resting place. But other
Mhm.
things in later movies, again, he uses knowledge. But again, like you said, he's a brawler. He's a fighter. He's not afraid of it. And but he still has to fight his way out against another regular dude driving the truck. And then, of course, that whole fight, he's hurt so bad. But then when he finally has control of the truck and he runs Belloc's car off the road, it's like, yes! And then he gets away with the Ark, and it's like, yes, he got it! He got it!
I love how petty he is. After he climbs back up into the truck, he throws that guy out the front just like he'd been thrown out. It's like, yeah, you try it.
Yeah.
And he he giggles when he dies.
And what I love also is that everything that Indy did to get out of it, because the truck is so battle damaged itself from Indy's saving himself, the guy tries to do, and the hood ornament peels off, and the grill peels off. You're done. You're done. You're out. You're out.
You're done. Well, since we're mentioning that plane fight scene a moment ago,
Okay.
I wanted to see if you knew the big dude that died in the propeller. He's Kale in Willow.
Yes. We talked about that in Willow, I believe.
Did we? Oh,
Yeah, I think we did.
I always love that piece of trivia.
Yeah. My favorite thing, one of my favorite things in this movie, again, is the imagery, the scene shots. One of my favorite moments visually is after he leaves Marion still tied up in the camp, and you have the Marion Belloc exchange going, and I want to talk about that too, because that's a fascinating exchange again of parallels to Marion Indy, Marion Belloc. But
there's good acting and writing in that scene.
Yeah. So, but what I love is as they're digging in the actual resting place, the actual Well of Souls, there's a moment there where you just see their silhouettes, and suddenly Indy just turns and you see him just put the hat on and the silhouette. That is one of my favorite moments just as a visual aspect, because right there, just the silhouette of Indiana Jones putting the hat on and then going back to her. It radiates cool. And I just say plain old, it's just cool. Not going to say awesome, not
cool.
say badass. It's just cool, because once upon a time, before words like cool and awesome were overused, and we're guilty of, we overuse it all the time, but there were just moments you just say, man, that's cool. That's just cool. Just that kind of just look, that moment, that's just cool. Adjusts it and then gets back to it. And let's talk about that little section. Again, guys, as usual, as you can see, we are jumping around this movie. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Everyone should know it.
Yeah, we're going to jump around and talk about what we enjoy the most. But that particular dichotomy of two scenes between Marion and Belloc and Indian Sala digging up and going down into the Well of Souls, it's fascinating. You mentioned it, great writing. How do you feel about those two scenes laid next to each other?
Well, yeah, they're mirror characters, like we mentioned. I mean, yes, they dress very differently, they act very differently, but they're motivated by various similar things. And Indy could become Belloc someday if he gets too enamored by the fortune and glory which previously motivated him. And so, of course, Marion's going to have interesting reactions to both characters because she may or may not see the similarities between them. And there's just a lot of subtlety built on foreshadowing, like Marion's ability to hold her liquor better than Belloc. We've established that. There's just so many little things.
Like there was set up for that, huh?
Set up and payoff. It's crazy. Why would we do that? That's just too much work. Set up and payoff.
My favorite thing in the parallels two scenes, of course, I love the exchange between Marion and Belloc. But what I look at in those two scenes is, again, I'm looking at Belloc and I'm looking at Indy. And we go back again, set up and payoff. At the beginning of the movie, Belloc, there's nothing you can get that I can't take away from you. And I'm always going to let you do all the work, and I'm going to get the payout. And it's again, Belloc is basically trying to get information out of Marion by getting her drunk.
Well,
But
real fast, that line applies just as much to Marion as it does to the
Mhm.
artifacts.
Yes, yes, oh yes, because Belloc had a thing for her. He totally had a thing for
Well,
her.
and now I may have missed it, but they met for the first time in Cairo, right? Belloc and
No,
Marion.
Belloc never saw Marion. He was a part of the kidnap. Belloc never saw Marion. No.
That's what I just said. That Belloc and Marion met in Cairo.
Oh, when you said Cairo meant the city, they're still in Cairo, the dig site. The dig site.
the dig
That's where
site.
they first meet. Yeah, the dig site. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's the first. Sorry, that's close enough. But yeah, that's when they met, and so I think a lot of the reason why Belloc is attracted so much to Marion is because Indy is.
He wants to take that. That's a legitimate theory. I like that.
I think that's the basis for his attraction to her, because he loves to take things away from. I think because that's when we see them meet, and he's already got the dress ready to go. He knows what she looks like, but doesn't know anything about her.
Sneaks a peek in the mirror.
So there's nothing to base off a relationship or attractiveness, in my opinion, beyond the idea, oh, pretty lady in the desert, or Indy likes her, and I can take this away from him.
That I've never actually thought about that, at least in that aspect. I always think about it taking away other things, but that is an excellent avenue of thought. I like that. I really do. But again, I love the parallels though. He's sitting there drinking, having a good time, pumping her for information, or wanting to pump her for information.
Oh, yeah.
But while Indy is out in the dirt doing the hard work. And then of course they open, and when you get to it, you realize again how difficult getting the Ark is for Disney when they open the Well of Souls, and it's filled with asps and cobras. And again, solid one-liner. Asps, very dangerous. Asps, very dangerous. I love that. I love that.
You go first.
You go first. And then Indy goes down, and then another classic moment when he falls, and then the cobra rears up. Now, back in the day, before digital remastering stuff, in original VHS versions, you could see the cobra's reflection in the glass they had down between Harrison Ford and the snake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in the day, you could see the reflection of the cobra. Because, yes, they weren't going to allow a cobra to be inches from Harrison Ford's nose. That was not going to happen. That wasn't going to happen. But so back in the day, again, they did the best they could probably, but on the VHS release, at least because that's what I first saw it on, and I noticed as I got older, you could see the faint reflection of the cobra. They've since removed that in remasters and stuff like that, but that's just one of the cool things. It's like the same cool little fun fact of the market fight scene, the chase scene, that Harrison Ford was very sick. The famous story, everybody knows it. He is massively sick on that day of shooting, and he was supposed to have a sword fight. Yeah, he was supposed to have the sword fight. He's just so sick, and they can't get the shot right, can't do it right again. This is why Harrison Ford is a great actor. Just like with Empire Strikes Back, I know after trying so hard, he'll get hit with that little bit of inspiration of, I think I know how to solve this problem. They can't do it. He's sick as hell, can't do the sword fight. The guy's done. Boom.
And even without him being sick, I think the scene works better with it.
Yes.
Because how could he have stayed up with Marion if that fight had happened? There would have been needed to be another contrivance to get him back on her trail. But with him getting shot, it gave him the
seconds.
time. And it's seconds versus minutes. And I think it definitely works better from a script standpoint, a soundness standpoint. It's a lot tighter, him shooting him. But I do have a little bit of a problem with what happens right afterwards. I don't think there's enough of a justification for the whole he's following them, carrying her in a basket down, and then he turns the corner that he saw them, and then he's suddenly behind him. I don't think there's enough of a justification shown for that misdirect.
I see that.
It's a little thing, but they went way too far, way too fast.
Again, I think that's Spielberg more than Lucas. That's Spielberg making a choice right there, and that stretches. I understand that. How one could say, oh, he's turning over all the ones, and when with that they went around, but it's just it's a little too much, and that and I'll say it now. That is what I consider the Spielberg fatal flaw. He has something that's going perfectly, and then he takes it one step too far. He did it in Jaws. He did it in a lot of other movies, and he does it in this movie too. Whereas and now you just pointed that scene out, and then he does it at the end. Everything is going great. Everything's flowing right, and then it's just one slight thing that makes you go, "Oh, did you really need to do that?" And you just brought that one up to me. The taking the basket chase, the tracking it one step too far to lose that suspense of disbelief. Yeah,
and even the death, I think, is a little bit. Even the way that they switched her out, like,
well,
yes,
when
they
did,
had
when did
the
it
opportunity.
happen?
Yeah, when did it
Yeah.
happen, and why did it happen?
Yeah,
I can believe it could happen.
you have I guess you have to headcanon it thinking Belloc wanted her. Because Belloc
and
is
so
there.
he set that up to fake her death.
I mean, it's never said in the movie, but Belloc set that whole thing up.
Right, but you can't. I don't know if Belloc could have predicted that she would have climbed into a basket.
Not okay. I guess. Oh, there you go. All right, you got me. You got me.
Yeah, like I totally believe that those guys had time to do it. I would have liked to see them do it, but I question why they did it more than anything else.
I mean, the only reason I say Belloc set it up is because there's a reason he's in that bar when Indy's trying to drink his sorrows away. He's there.
No. I do believe that Belloc was involved in getting them captured because the Nazis were, and so he was working with them. But I just don't think that's something that you could have predicted would happen. So I've always
that's putting a lot of trust in your thugs to think on their feet.
It's more why. That's my biggest problem. Even if you could do it, why?
Yeah, so I mean that's George. George wrote the scene, and then Spielberg probably made some notes and changed a couple things there. So they're both involved in the slight incredulity of it. So
that whole sequence
convinced me. You've convinced me. I never thought about it.
I love the shot. I love him shooting the guy instead of fighting him with the sword, and I think that helps the scene. But the rest of that whole sequence, until he's at the bar, I think is weaker than the rest of the movie. It's not bad. It's just not as tight or as logical as it could be compared to the rest of the movie. It's probably the sequence in the movie that I have the biggest issue with, besides the whip and the gun at the beginning.
It's all done to give the sense of, well, I understand the whole reasoning behind it. The whole you need to sense that loss, that destitute feeling in Indy, where he's just lost somebody he thinks he's in love with still. I mean, we're not sure because that's again. All right, let me finish this thing, and then I want to talk about Indy and Marion's relationship. He loses her when he just found her again, and it's crushing him. And then that interaction with Belloc is supposed to help center him, but then of course finding the medallion, getting the medallion situation, and getting a zero on the Ark, Indy then drowns himself in his work, in his hunt for the mysteries of the Ark, and that gets it back. But then when he finds Marion again,
which is another coincidence, he chose a random tent at the dig site and happened to be hers.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to shrug that kind of thing off. Sometimes,
like I get it, but it's still there's a lot of little coincidences like that in the movie that bring it down a little bit for me.
Yeah, I agree that there are, but then that one though is when he finds her again, his faith is restored, but then he still chooses the Ark over her at that point, which I find very interesting. But let's talk about Indy and Marion, which again is how we're able to, I think, as good intellectual critics of these types of things we love. And again, I don't do a lot of watching behind the scenes stuff. I don't read a lot of old interviews, so I don't know if it's ever come up in discussion. But to put Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood in their backstory in a very inappropriate relationship is a fascinating choice to me, especially when you're a kid, you don't understand it. When I was a kid and I watched this, that doesn't translate. But as an adult, you realize that she says, "I was a child. You knew it was wrong." It's fascinating that they chose to do that. And
it's weird, but I think they even exaggerated it a little bit because he was 25 and she was 18. That's
18?
not.
I thought she was. I thought she was.
No,
16.
she was an adult when it happened.
Oh, okay. I guess somewhere in my mind, I got the math wrong on
At
that.
least that's what Gary said. So I'm
Well,
going
this
to
is
blame it
Gary's
on him if
favorite
I'm
of the
wrong.
trilogy, so I guess he would have done the research on that.
Yeah,
because
that's what he was talking about. Is it wasn't that big of a difference. It's just her being 18 is the weird part. But it's still legal, totally fine, just a little
Okay,
weird,
yeah.
and a lot better than Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher when they first hooked up.
Yeah.
That one was what, 11, 12 years when she was
There,
19?
yeah, she was 18, 19. I mean, but they were. The funny thing is, their character ages are the proper ages. they play their ages in the movie. Like Han Solo is 10 years older than Leia.
Well, with mentioning them, this might be a controversial opinion, but I think Indy has better chemistry with Marion than Han does with Leia.
I think because they gave them a backstory. I think that's why.
Well, I just mean actors talking to each
Oh,
other, like
oh, oh.
in the scenes, in the
Well,
moment. I think
that's
actors have
because
better
I think it's because
chemistry.
Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher effed, and that kind of ruined it a little bit.
That does kind of ruin it. I think the writing for the relationship is probably better in Star Wars, but the actors, I think, had better chemistry in Raiders.
Well, in Empire, their chemistry is peak in Empire. It's in Jedi where their chemistry falls off a little bit. Because I think they resented each other at that point.
Well, and Harrison just didn't want to be there. He
didn't want to be there yet. We talked about that in our Jedi discussion. Yeah, he did not want to be a part of that. He phoned it in for half the movie. He was all right in the first part, but when they get to Endor, he's just totally phoning it in. And, okay, it's fine. I accept it. But and we talked about that. A different show. Go watch our Jedi discussion. Yeah. But she to her reaction, I'm always struck by that it was wrong and you knew it line. That always sticks with me.
Yeah.
When I see the scene, because he broke her heart. And because he just bailed. He bailed. And it was just and that's why I say when you bring up their relationship, I think that Indy Marion relationship carries more weight because there's a history. And but that's the great writing and the directing of it. In that one scene, you get the entire scope of their history when he walks into the bar and they have that exchange. And when it all ends, her line, I'm your goddamn partner. I'm not just going along. I'm your goddamn partner, because she holds up the medallion
until she gets paid.
And that's the thing. And you bring it way back to the early discussion. That's why Marion, Marion is one of those perfect arguments we can throw in the face of all those crap woke SJW idiot artards of there's no been strong women in movies. Karen Allen, Marion Ravenwood. That at 1981.
Yeah, but she doesn't fight anyone real good.
She hits a guy with a frying pan.
She does. She does win that fight.
She's a guy with a frying pan.
There are different types of strength. We've got Ellen from we've got Ripley from Alien. We've got Marion in this movie. There's plenty of them. They're just different, and that's okay.
But that's the problem today, though. These diversity artards think that a woman can only be strong and powerful if she's doing high impact fighting like a man.
Yep. Well, just look at Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She was the better fighter. She was the better historian, better archaeologist. She was the better historian than Indiana Jones.
The guy could speak 20 languages. The guy, sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. But Marion is a perfect description of what a strong woman can be without being an ass kicker. I mean, she runs away from all those guys and she should in the market chasing. She should run because they are bigger and stronger than her and outnumber her. And she's not going to do backflips and Huracan Radas to flip them around and hit scissor takedowns. It's not going to happen. And it's because that's the realism of it. That's the realism of it. And that's why, again, a great template of a strong female character that the 80s and the 90s understood intrinsically, because it was just about making good characters. George wrote a good character. Spielberg directed Karen Allen to give a great performance. And you got it, and you enjoyed it, and you didn't even think. We didn't even, and again, when I say we, I say old farts like myself. We didn't even think about that stuff back then. There was not a thought of, is this chick going to be an ass kicker? It was just, I like this character. She was fun. She was great. She was sexy in the white dress. It all worked. I don't hold the whole white dress thing like others do. I didn't zero in. I was too young to zero in on that when it happened. By the time I was old enough, I had other things to occupy my adolescent thoughts than Karen Allen in the white dress on top of the submarine or on top of on the deck of the freighter. You know, I didn't need that. I had a lot of other things with him, but it's great. And to wrap up the discussion of their relationship, the freighter scene, it's a beautifully, subtly romantic scene.
Mm-hmm.
With comedy that worked. When she flips the mirror around and you just cut to the shot of the freighter and you hear him going, oh!
In this trilogy, Harrison makes some weird noises a lot, like that one, or how he delivers in Temple of Doom. We are going to die. Just the way
are going to die.
He just, I don't know what it is about this trilogy, but Harrison was having fun with the role, I think.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of it all. And that's also the beauty of having the same writer and the same director for 3 movies. You didn't change anything. Consistency matters in quality. It really does.
Oh, don't tell that to Kathleen Kennedy. She doesn't know that.
No.
She doesn't know you need consistency.
All right, the last couple of things I want to focus in on here is of course, now the titular title of the movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Ark in itself is a character. It once they get their hands on it, when they pull it out of its resting place, when Silent Night take out the glow that is emanating, its thing, and it is alive. Because one of my favorite moments in the movie is when it's on the freighter, and you saw that moment early on when the Nazis boxed it up and specifically put the eagle emblem on there. When the Ark is in the hold, hang on one second.
Uh-oh.
Excuse me. No, it's throat gets dry and the cough is still very close to like right here in my top of my chest. But when the Ark is in the hold, one of my favorite scenes is when you hear the reverberation noise and it burns the Nazi eagle emblem. And it took me a decade to realize, and I can admit this because I watched it as a child and much older, that it burns an image of itself onto the crate. That's just cool.
Yeah.
You realize then that in that moment, you realize that the Ark, whether it's God or the Ark itself, you don't know. Again, these are things you don't need to really have an answer to.
Ambiguity. It's a powerful tool.
And I'm not always the biggest fan of ambiguity, but when done right, I appreciate it. The Ark rejects the Nazi symbol and puts itself on there saying, this is what's in here. And it's got a mind
of its own.
And also, to me, that's the warning. That's its final warning. I am in here. Do not take me out. Do not play with me. I am not a toy. You leave me in the box. Leave me in the box. Don't play with me. I am not a toy.
Stop saying that.
What? Don't play with me? Yeah. My point is, and
don't take it out. Don't play with me.
Don't play with the box. Don't. They take it out, but what I'm saying is it gives you all the warnings necessary. Leave the Ark alone. And you arrive at the final scene. There's
real fast before the burning happens. I love the rat scene.
Yeah, the rat. It's like does the rat die? I think the rat dies in the presence of it, because the rat is just having a spastic fit as the Ark is emanating its power. And again, that's great direction right there. That is great direction.
Mhm.
Now, so we get to the island where after the Nazis take the Ark and take Marion, and Indy does heroic. Now, Indy holding on to the sub that and getting in there for a second. Where does he hide in the sub? That's a question you got to ask. Where does
Someone
he
tried
hide
to
in that
convince
sub?
me that the submarine didn't go below the water; that they just stayed on the surface the whole way for hundreds of miles.
Okay, Algram says the rats didn't die. Okay, the rats didn't die.
But and like that's another thing, another piece of the movie that I struggle with.
The sub. How does he stay hidden all the way to the base on the island?
Because he has to get inside of it, but we don't see him get inside of it. And then once he's inside, where does he hide? Why didn't he get a uniform right off the bat? That's what I would have done, is get a uniform right in the sub, not waiting till we get to the base.
I think, again, that was a little more of that subtle comedy they wanted to get in there of him, the guy finding him, trying to dress him down, comb your hair, and then he just punches him, and the hat falls on him.
I do love that moment. It's really fun.
But now the whole island scene, again, we touched on it before. The real beginning, the real climax begins when they're trudging through the canyon, heading to the site where they're going to settle up, and then boom! Oh, you hear this? Hello! And then you shoot up there. There's Indy holding a rocket launcher or a Panzer. We'll say it's Panzer Shrek. It's Panzer Shrek. Call it what it is, Panzer Shrek. And he's ready to blow it up. All I want is the girl, Belloc. I'll blow it up. Just give me the girl. You can keep it. And that's the fascinating development of Indy's character from this. So he's gone from trying to solve this mystery, and at this point, because he got Marion back after he lost her, he just wants her now. The mystery, the tangibles in life matter more to him than the mysteries of the occult. Or the mysteries of theology, we'll say. It's I'm not saying religion is a cult. I'm borrowing the line.
Cult is different than cult.
I know, but what occult? I'm borrowing the line from beginning of the movie where they say Hitler is obsessed with the occult. That's why I said that. But the mystery, I'll say the mysteries of theology. He's beyond that. He just wants the girl. But then Belloc gives that impassioned speech, and here's where I'm going to interject something that I thought about on this rewatch. Again, you watch with the critical eye when you do a review discussion.
Yep.
After Belloc gives the speech, do you think that Indy decided to put into play the plan of the Ark is going to do the work for me and wipe this and get me out and get us out of the situation?
I think that would have been possible if they had set up that payoff a little bit. Like if they just added in a couple lines when he was giving the exposition to the feds. If he said, "Oh, this passage of scripture says any unworthy who look upon it will surely die," or something like that. Some passage of scripture. If that groundwork had been laid at the beginning, I totally believe that's something he would have bet upon, because at this point he's starting to believe that there is a potential that it's real because of the things he's seen in relation to it. So if they set that up, maybe, but at this point, I don't know if he has any evidence to say that it'll kill them.
Well, the imagery that they took, we saw in the book in the beginning of the movie shows the Ark decimating. So he knows that the Ark will decimate the unworthy, those who not worship the Hebrew God. So, but I just made me wonder, by giving up and letting him, by surrendering and allowing them to be tied up with Marion, a part of him thought, okay, my way out of this is to let them do what they're going to do and pay for it. And because he is aware, because during the whole incident, he says, "Keep your eyes shut, Marion, don't look." He knew that much, that you're not supposed to look at this. You're not.
I think he should have said that line sooner, though, because he's clearly looking at it when they're touching the broken down.
But as
dust.
soon as he's looking at it, but then it's when the spirits begin.
Yeah,
that's when he says, "Shut your eyes, don't look," because then he realizes you're not supposed to witness God in this form. You're not supposed to look upon this. Even the most worthy aren't supposed to look like, and that's why the worthy were worthy, because they realized we shouldn't see this. This is the act of this is the hand of God. This is like the finger of God coming down in this moment when that happens. And it's like you're not supposed to do that. Now I want to answer something Legata said. I wasn't inclining that Indy was religious. When I said that the mysteries of theology, I'm simply meaning that from the academic standpoint, from that, like we've talked about throughout this discussion,
the truth
yearning
behind
to
the
just
myth,
to find the truth, to get the answers, to put to rest what's going on. I wasn't intending to say that there was any sort of religious connection, that Indy was religious. When I said theology, I meant the mysteries of theology, the questions, what's going on. So that's what I meant by that.
Well, since we're in this section,
Yeah.
I think we have to do it in this video at some point, this live stream at some point, is address the criticism of this movie that when people say that the Nazis still lose if Indiana Jones isn't in the movie. You take Indiana the movie and the same result
We
happens.
talked about this last week. We touched on this, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think we need to talk about it
Oh, yeah.
briefly
Of
here.
course. Yeah.
And as we said on that other stream, the Nazis would still have the arc at the end.
Yeah.
Indy, his involvement in the film gets the arc into American hands, which is better. At least it's in some warehouse somewhere, not being used in the war.
Top men.
Someone tried to counteract with me with that, saying that the arc would just have been lost on the island, which is still a better option because all the Yahtzees, I've said it a few times.
You said Nazis. I purposely said it first to let you know I didn't care.
Okay.
It's part of this. It's part of the discussion.
The Nazis, because we don't know if all the Nazis are there. It looks like that base is way too big for the 50 people or whatever who went out there. I think less than 50.
That was a full-on submarine harbor right there. That was a submarine dock.
There's got to be hundreds of people at that secret location. So when everyone doesn't come back, the other Nazis come and they're like, oh, something's weird here. Let's take this arc somewhere. And it still ends up in Hitler's hands.
Yeah.
So the fact that Indy's there to take possession of the arc right away is essential.
How they smuggle it off the island, I guess that's left to wonder. But I guess they could have found something. Because they were not near the base, so it would have been very easy for Indy and Marion to disappear on the island and somehow get out of there. I don't know.
Carrying the arc would have been an issue with just the two of them because it struggled with Indy and what's his bucket, John Rhys Davies.
Yeah, solid.
I don't think Marion's as strong as solid.
Well, they got it out of there.
They did.
They got it out of there. So that all right. So now we're at the climax here. Now I want to spend the last bit talking about this. The Belloc gets in his big bishop outfit, and Mr. Glass's Nazi guy whose name I can never remember is there too.
He's a great villain,
and they're filming it. They're going to film it for posterity because Belloc has to look at it before they send it back to Berlin. He's got to be the first to do it because this is his victory. And they go. He does a whole Hebrew incantation, and they open it up. And of course, it's just the remains of the Ten Commandments are just dust at this point. They're just because it's been thousands of years. It's been 5,000 years, so it's going to be dust. Point is, we've already established from the arc itself that it has power. It established that in the scene with the crate. And now you're wondering, and then, of course, now it begins. Now, this scene, again, as I said before, it's nearly perfect, but it suffers from what, again, I call the Spielberg fatal flaw. It starts off great, the mystery of it, as soon as Spirit's going, the soundtrack, the score of the arc theme is all over. It's there. You're watching like, oh shit, what's going to happen? What's going to go on? And then the horror aspect begins. Now it starts off fine. I don't have a problem with the horror aspect when it's like da da da, and suddenly the spirits go all vengeful and they start doing it. And then of course, the judgment of God fires out and just
the face melting is incredible practical.
There
effects.
it is. The face melting starts off good, but then I always feel that Spielberg takes it one step too far with the face melting. I just feel he goes one step too far into from the horror to the grotesque. That's just, I've always felt that way. It never sat well with me as a kid. And then as a young adult discussing with other people, older adults, people like me, it always stuck with me that especially now Belloc's head explodes, and that's fine. To me, it's the two Nazis, the way they melt. I don't think we needed to see the complete.
Oh, I
melt all the way to the
disagree.
square.
I
Really?
love that because mainly because it's practical effects. It's impressive, and so I'm more impressed than anything.
Well, I can see the that I can understand that. I just feel from that it always ever so slightly takes up because I feel like I didn't need that final grotesque shot.
I actually think I have more of a problem with how Balok went. I think as the primary antagonist throughout the movie, he should have gotten a little bit different death than just suddenly exploding. And seeing chunks of him, I think, is more grotesque than seeing someone melt.
It's the same. But that still falls into the category we're talking about. I feel like the final moments before the arc erupts in the maelstrom of divine wrath. I always feel. I just think you could have cut away 1 second earlier. I didn't need to see the final melting all the way to the. I take what you say as it's an impressive practical effect. I take that out and I say yes, massively impressive because it's art. That's art. The art form of practical effect is there, but from the experience of it, it's never quite sat well with me, and that's why I take away that small.
It's interesting that you have an issue with this final scene because I actually do have an issue with it as well, which is different. I find it incredibly cheesy and weird looking that the lid of the ark flies up into the air and lands perfectly on it. I do think it's a good idea.
God.
I do think it's a good idea that it closes itself at the end, but they should have cut away from that. Seeing it just float in the air like that just looks so weird to me. It looks really weird to me.
It's a little camp.
It's very camp. So if it had just been like we saw, the maelstrom disappear, and then when Indy looks, the lid's on it. Like,
okay, you didn't need to see it hit. Okay, I
didn't need to see it fly. I like everything else about the maelstrom. I love the melting.
That's
I think
that's my people's God. That's the Judeo wrath of God. It's not a forgiving God. It's a wrathful God.
It's
Fire
Old
and brimstone. Old Testament shit. Fire and brimstone. But yeah, so it's interesting that I never thought about the lid. I always like the fact that the lid is there when it lands back on top. I never thought about it and like that. But again, that could be that one aspect of Spielberg taking something just a little bit too far and straining that sense of that sense of disbelief. All right.
I would have been disappointed if it weren't in there, honestly. I'm very much in the opposite camp when it comes to seeing them melt.
The grotesque part, yeah.
Yeah, well, the grotesque part.
Wow, we have different opinions.
No way. But yeah, I think it adds a lot to it. Seeing what actually happens. Like, if they just cut away to the army man shot is what I call it. There's a shot where the fire's getting sucked back up into the ark where it's clear that all the bodies on the ground are fake. I call it the army man shot. It looks like army men that have been tipped over. If we just cut to that, I would have been very disappointed.
But everything's gone, and don't correct me wrong. The bodies are gone. The ark sucks them all up, and it just wipes it all away. Now, I do like during the Wrath of God moment when all the Nazis are getting electrocuted and their eyes are on fire, and you see the power coursing through them. I like that. That I like, because that's just Wrath of God electrocuting all of them. That's cool. But then there it is. Then you get the ending, and I love the ending of the movie. I do love the ending of the movie where it's basically Indy wants it on display, protected, and Top Men. Yeah, Top Men is just a middle of nowhere, and it remains middle of nowhere because Crystal Skull didn't happen. Middle of nowhere warehouse, just classified, lost in a warehouse of stuff. Now, what would you say that is the ark willing itself to be hidden again? Would you say that? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely a possibility.
The ark influencing. Yeah.
Yeah. Affecting the technology, getting rid of the cameras, the lights. I can see it.
Right there, and just saying, I'm going to use a little bit of that divine influence, and I'm going to get myself lost again, because being lost in that warehouse in who knows where and crates that look exactly the same, that is the same as being swallowed up in a sandstorm and buried for thousands of years. Because how are you ever going to find that? You're not. You're not. And that's how Crystal Skull didn't happen. Now, one of my favorite parts, as always, in our discussions, the music. 1981, peak John Williams. This is John Williams at his best. He is, again, 4 years removed from creating one of the most iconic opening themes of all time. He again creates one of the most iconic themes in modern movie soundtrack history, the Indiana Jones theme. And here's my story. I mentioned earlier, when I was a teenager, my stepdad would lease cars. That's how we had our cars in the family. He would lease cars. So it was always the cars every 3 or 4 years. He would just trade in and swap out. So we had a shifting cars. And at one point, it was SUV time. So Grand Cherokee. My mom had a Grand Cherokee, and that was the first time there was a CD player in the car. So that was kind of a cool new thing for us back then. But with the Grand Cherokee came a CD. I think it was Grand Cherokee, and we had a Bravada before that. I think it was the Grand Cherokee. I might be mixing them up, but either way, it doesn't matter, because I don't remember a CD player being in the Bravada. I remember a CD player being in the Grand Cherokee. Now, but with it came this CD, a CD with music on it. What do you think the first track was on that CD?
The indie theme, I'm guessing.
The Raiders indie theme. And it was promoting, you're going in your Grand Cherokee. You're about to go off into off-road wilderness adventure. And here is the theme we want you to listen to as you go do it, as you put the first CD on. You're going to listen to the Raiders of the Lost Ark Indiana Jones theme. And you put that in there, and you realize, I'm taking away on an adventure now. I'm going on an adventure, because this theme is adventure personified. And it's just glorious. That is why it always comes down to in all those soundtrack, score, composer battles, it's always going to be John Williams versus John Williams, because he creates iconic music that is just incomparable. And then, of course, the whole soundtrack of this movie, John Williams magic. Every scene is punctuated by the perfect music.
Well, I do love the soundtrack, just like you're talking about. It's John Williams at his best. I do think it falls substantially below Star Wars as a whole. Because
no question.
The main theme's the only theme in Indiana Jones that I think the average person will know off the top of their head. As there's 5 from Star Wars that everybody knows.
You are absolutely correct. In the head-to-head John Williams final showdown, Star Wars would beat Indiana Jones. But what I'm talking about is just from the choreographed standpoint, the scoring standpoint, the theme, again, it's iconic. And again, that's why John Williams is the GOAT. That's why he's the GOAT, because he creates history with his music. It's history. But then when you watch the movie, every scene is perfectly scored. Marion and Indy's theme, the Ark's theme, the adventure themes. I mean, when you're watching the movie, you know them. You're not the average person, unlike nerds like us, they're not gonna remember. But when you're watching a movie, you know those themes. You know what they're connected to, and they'll linger with you. That's the beauty of the John Williams magic. His music will linger with you for a day or so after watching the movie. Now, it's a Star Wars track. It's going to stay with you forever. You're always going to have that in your head. But the indie themes, all 3 movies, they will linger with you for a while after you watch it. And that's just the magic of a John Williams score. That's why he is the GOAT. He's the GOAT. I love this music. And again, the music elevates it, because that's what John Williams scores do. They elevate every single movie that they are a part of. All right. You got anything else you want to add on the music?
Not particularly. You definitely covered it.
Oh, I sucked up all the oxygen. I'm sorry. All right. All right. So there you go. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Jed, score it for us today. What is your score?
All right. Everybody knows it's difficult for me to give things high scores.
Jed's a rough score.
I'm a rough scorer, and even still, despite how high my score is going to be, there's definitely going to be some people upset with me because I do have a lot of issues with the movie, especially with the contrivances, the coincidences, and just a lack of cohesion in a few different areas. So I'm going to give it a flat 9.
So am I. Flat 9. I give it a flat 9.
It's incredible. It's a hallmark of the greatest cinema ever created. It's just got a few things in it that take it away from being as good as some others.
For me, it's mostly that Spielberg fatal flaw, as I call it, where there are instances where he, from my perspective, he just goes one step too far, and it just breaks that suspension of disbelief that, to me, is so necessary for these movies. But again, 9.0. 9.0. And
from us, that's pretty good.
Yeah, end of the show. This isn't my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Really?
Last Crusade is my favorite. I love Last Crusade. To me, embodies everything that Raiders and Temple of Doom have. It takes all the great parts of both those movies and puts it in one, and then adds Sean Connery, and then puts Sean Connery in it. Sir Sean.
I'll have to rewatch it to make a decision, but
we'll get
remember
there. We're gonna get there.
Being my favorite.
We'll get there. I know that Gary will drop thunderous wrath upon me for saying that Last Crusade is better than Raiders. But if I remember correctly, when they ran the poll on that FNT, when that came up, or maybe it was Real BBC, Last Crusade won, if I remember correctly, as people's favorite. I believe
If not, it was very close.
Yeah, it was close. Temple of Doom, distant third. I like Temple of Doom. I do like Temple of Doom. It grows on you over the years. But yeah, so there you go. Another one in the books. And we can't announce next week's movie because it's a carryover from before I got sick. We wanted to celebrate Tom Cruise. And we were hoping to line it up with Dead Reckoning, but we are now going to be a week or so late. So next week, we are doing A Few Good Men.
Love it.
It's a great movie. Unfortunately, I did watch it when we were supposed to do it. I might have to rewatch it.
I'm gonna need to rewatch it myself as well.
I had watched it right before we were supposed to do it, before I crashed. But so
we
next
gotta
week,
actually watch some Mission Impossible movies on here, though.
Oh, we will. Here's the thing. Now we've heard that a little tangent as we end here. We've heard that the strike is now delayed. Dead Reckoning Part 2. That is, I believe it has been shut down. Yep. So I might have to reconsider my statement I made last week to wait till both parts are out. I think it depends on how long this goes.
If the strike goes longer for a week or two, it's going to be delayed by 2 years because it's a summer movie. It's a summer movie, so it has to come out in the summer. And so
I don't know how that shit works. Just 2 weeks delays it 2 years. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, so I'm probably gonna have to reconsider my stance on waiting for both parts to be out.
I think it's worth it waiting 2 years from not from your perspective, but from like a everyday person. 2 years isn't that bad. It's definitely worth it from that sense because of how good I believe part 1 was. But it is disappointing. I would have liked them to pull a Lord of the Rings and film them both at the same time.
I thought they had done that. I thought that's what they had done. Honestly,
there's no way they could have because the budget for the first one was almost $300 million.
I guess we'll talk about that tomorrow. We are going to have to talk about its budget and its opening weekend because there's a lot of interesting things about the numbers surrounding Dead Reckoning Part 1. But yeah, I mean, the other part is that I want to see them both because if these final 2 movies stick the landing, that means I'm looking forward to buying the complete series on Blu-ray.
8 movies?
Yeah. All of them, yeah. So that
the
would be
only bad one is 2, in my opinion, and it's
I
still
saw
fun.
2 once. I saw 2 once.
I can still watch 2 and enjoy it, but it's definitely the worst one. And 3
I saw
not
2
far
once.
behind.
The best thing for me is the Metallica single that came out of it. That's the best thing for me. I never saw 3. I've never seen 3. Honestly,
people are way too forgiving of 3. 3's fine. It's not bad. It's just when you've got 5 gold movies, you don't compare 3 to them. It's not on the same level.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful because a lot of us will automatically go, "Oh, Jar Jar made it. F this movie." That's something a lot of us have to sort of, I think, be careful.
Yeah,
of.
it's just generic. The villain's probably close to the best, if not the best of the series, but that's the main thing it's got going for it.
Yeah. So I haven't seen these, but if that's why, again, that to me, that's I think the worst thing is that the delay would keep me from possibly putting it on my shelf.
Yeah. Well, you got to
complete
marathon
series on
them,
my shelf.
bro. I'm one of the
Well-
few people apparently in existence who the first one's still my favorite, without question.
I like the
Fallout's
first one.
close, but the first one just.
Here's the thing, with the exception of the first one, I've only seen every other one once. I've only because I was always late to watching them, so it was like, okay, I need something to watch tonight. Oh, it's for rent through PlayStation Store. Okay, rent, watch. I had a good time. Yay. Okay, moving on.
And another thing that I'm in the minority about is Ghost Protocol. I love it. I adore it. I think it's the worst of the new four. Like, it's still amazing, but when you got Rogue Nation, Fallout, and Dead Reckoning to compare it to, it doesn't even hold close. Like, the villain's terrible in it. And there's a lot of cheesiness, like Mission Accomplished. He says that when he wins at the end or thinks he wins.
I don't remember. Again, I've only seen it once. Even my crazy memory, if I've only seen something once, it doesn't quite work. I need to see it a couple of times for it to like. I mean, before we did the stream tonight, I did a quick recap of the entire Raiders movie in my head. I went from scene 1 to final scene. I just laid back and I just went zip, like at the 10 times speed you watch it. You watch stuff. Anyway, all right, guys. Thanks one and all for being here. If you're watching live right now, if you're still watching on the replay, the re-upload, hit that like button if you had a good time, and we will catch you next week. So until then, everybody, take it easy. Have a good night or day wherever you may be.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally is the Force. And the powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow.
You failed your hunt. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer! And let's set the dogs of war.
Chevron 2 is coded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
I'll also say that you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Not for while you can, monk boy.
Great Scott.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass! I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Thanks for watching, everybody. If you'd like to reach out to me, please email me at theranernerd@gmail.com for all channel business purposes. I am on Twitter now, mostly for promotion and sharing of videos, maybe a little shit stirring here and there, who knows, at @theranernerd. You can also find me at the Geeks and Gamers forums under @ROAS, and you can see me on Rumble and Odyssey under the Renaissance Nerd. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.